Hello and welcome to Car and Bike. We have a very special guest today, Gerald Kiska, founder and chairman of Kiska Design, that company which is very well known for a lot of design awards across the globe from multiple products. But in our context, very well known for motorcycle design, particularly KTM motorcycles. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
And you've had a long association with KTM, hasn't it been? Like
Yes,
in the 90s?
more than 30 years, maybe.
More than 30 years. So how did Kiska Design come about? The stories that go around is that it started in your kitchen table, is it correct?
This is true. And then a couple of months after the start, I ran into Stefan Pierer, who was not at KTM at the time, but it's the first time we met. And then we were invited for a design competition in KTM, and that's a thing that we won. And a year later, Stefan joined the business, and from then on, it started to fly.
Wow. So lots of design awards. Globally, you're well known as one of the top design companies, firms across the world now.
Thank you.
And KTM, very different kind of edgy, sharp designs that we've seen over the years. And so what has been the evolution of the KTM designs been like over the past, since the 90s that you've started designing the KTM bikes?
Well, it was a little bit softer at the start, but soon after the start, I would say 2-3 years after we started designing for KTM, we shifted more towards hard edge. Why? Because it became trendy in the automotive industry at the time, and it also represented a little bit the charisma and the personality of the company and of the brand itself.
Right.
It is a sharp brand.
Yeah. So the trellis, the steel trellis frame, it's also a part of the design, as well as the whole structure of the motorcycle, of the KTM nakeds.
Yes.
We see. Is that something which you complement with KTM, or does the engineering team come back to Kiska, and how does it work, the whole process?
It all starts over technology. I think that KTM is probably the company that knows it best how to work with steel. Even in MotoGP, they use a steel frame, unlike anyone else.
Right.
They have that material very much under control, and they also see the advantage that steel has over aluminium in terms of stiffness. And this is what they use to create better handling bikes and more precise bikes. And meanwhile, we made it also a trademark visually of KTM, because it is always let me say, a structure that you can show. It's not just an aluminium casted piece. It is almost bridge technology, or a technology that you use for bridges, building bridges. This is how the frames look like. People like it. We tend to show it even more.
So as the years have progressed, there's been more emission, tighter, stricter emission norms, more plumbing, so to speak, bigger catalytic converters. Has that been a challenge to hide them or sort of conceal them?
Yes, and it still is a challenge, because again, the next generation of bikes will have again bigger volumes, as well as on the intake side as well as on the exhaust side. Both volumes are growing, so bigger airboxes, bigger pre-silencers, bigger silencers. The whole thing gets very complicated, heavy and expensive. And we designers, we have to deal with it. So it's a lot of our effort and time to make this acceptable, I would say.
So apart from KTM, any particular brand or any particular style that you would say, okay, this is a good looking motorcycle, that in your personal opinion?
For sure, we always had our, let me say, also our heroes that we looked at. Ducati is one, MV Agusta was one. Now also part of the group, so therefore we will also have the pleasure to put our hands on that one. Yes, for sure, in each category there is something to gain or something to learn from others. Right. And that's what we do.
Okay. And over the past maybe 7, 8, 10 years, there's been a huge mushrooming of the modern classic genre of motorcycles, which KTM doesn't have at the moment, but I'm just talking about it.
We do it a little bit on the Husqvarna side, in a more modern interpretation, I would say. Yeah. And there are also successful examples on the car side. Mini, for one, is one that made it quite clever and quite famous. Usually it's a very difficult topic to handle, because there is no future. Once you start retro, what's the next one? It's more retro or less retro? So this is a very difficult thing to deal with. For us, it's an addition, it's not the core, because when someone uses it at the core, I think it's a very dangerous position.
I would say neo-retro, modern classic,
Yeah.
is a perfect example would be the Husqvarna Norden. It looks like made for the future, something like straight out of a Mad Max
Yes,
movie perhaps.
exactly,
So
yes.
what was the thought process behind designing that Norden? We saw the concept and we saw the production model. They're more or less quite close to each other.
Yes, but that you will figure out on a KTM side as well. Our let me say show models were always quite close to what later on you could see on the street.
Right.
It means that we are rather realistic on show models, or you could say we are more disciplined than others because we want to keep the core elements of it and try to make them into production.
Right.
Husqvarna, yes, is exactly this, let me say, middle position in the market. It is a lot more traditional than a KTM. It's also offering a little bit more comfort. It's a little bit less extreme and less aggressive, I would say,
Right.
but it's still sporty. So it's a, let me say, slightly more relaxed rider than we see on a KTM.
Right.
And that enlarges the target group that we can address quite significantly.
Okay. So India, as you are well aware, is the largest motorcycle market in the world right now. Of course, there's a huge riding community, but apart from the riding community, there's a huge enthusiast in the design side of the people who sketch, people who
Yes.
make CAD designs. So
Yes.
what is your advice to somebody who's like into motorcycle design or who's starting off on motorcycle design?
We already have some Indian designers in our team. Currently we have 36 different nationalities in our design team. So people from all over the place, I would say. And there's a fair chance for Indian talents to join us.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us and
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All the best.